We'll be using the chat box to ask questions when the time comes. So try out the chat box now and just say hello. Let us know that you're here. Good morning, Christine. Hello, Rosemary. Got a great group of people. And we've got some CAM staff here too. I'd like to introduce everyone. I know that you guys know Bob and Ann. We also have the great good fortune to have Carla Hanzal here with us. Carla curated the Elizabeth Bradford exhibition, and she's here with us from Charlotte. And I'd like to, if it's okay, Carla, tell folks a little bit about you before we get started. Carla began her career in the arts as an NEA fellow while she was in graduate school at American University. She became director of exhibitions at the International Sculpture Center in Washington, D.C. In 2002, she became the curator of modern and contemporary art at the Mint Museum in Charlotte. And in 2015, she became vice president of public art at the Arts and Science Council. We're so excited to have Carla here, and we can't wait till we can have Carla here in person, but the Zoom will have to do for now. So I think we're all ready to start this ride. We've got 36 people. Hello, Peggy. Hello, Kathy. Hello, Sabrina, Nan, and Jeanette. We're so glad you're here. So I'll get started. I'll move to the first slide and let Carla take it away.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's really been a great opportunity to be able to work with the CAM Museum to curate the Elizabeth Bradford exhibition. She's an artist that I've known since I first came to the Mint, actually through her son, who was included in a Cross Currents exhibition. He did an interactive design with his collaborative design group that we presented at the Mint Museum of Craft and Design, as well as at the North Carolina Museum of Art. I first met her there as like the mom of the artist, and then I gradually got to know her as an artist in Davidson, North Carolina, and was just really fascinated and a huge fan of her very wonderful contemporary landscapes. And when we were building the Mint Museum Uptown and trying to gather more artworks for the collection, Wells Fargo generously helped support the acquisition of 11 paintings of her work to include in the Mint's collections. I got to really know Elizabeth more then, and then most recently curated an exhibition for the Blowing Rock Museum of Art and History. So we've become friends. I'm a huge fan of her work. We both share a profound love of nature. We both grew up kind of with a connection to the rural landscape. She had her grandparents' farm, and then I grew up on a ranch in Nebraska, and we always had huge gardens, and I got to really examine nature firsthand every day. So it's something that's a very innate part of me. So I think that's something that's also drawn me to working with Elizabeth and with this exhibition. So it all came together on a rainy, drizzly day in November when Ann and Jay Everett and Elizabeth and I all met in her beautiful farmhouse and studio and started looking at some of the works of art. And then there you can see the studio. It's actually a renovated barn that she has been able to repurpose for her studio. And she has great fun parties at her house too. Once in a while, the little deck over there houses a band. There's usually a bonfire. So you can see her artwork. There's fun bands, and she's really a fully rounded art person and enjoys sharing her space with others. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the exhibition, and we came up with the theme and the title of the show, which is A House of One Room. And that's actually was taken from a quote by John Muir as he was advocating for the beginning of the national park system in the 1930s. And in part, we thought this was appropriate because many of the paintings that will be included in the larger show have their point of reference as from a national park. So since Elizabeth has really become a major outdoors woman, she kayaks, she camps, she travels to places of wilderness as her really main avocation. And all of these trips really fuel her artistic practice. So I I'm going to read a little bit, and I know it's always kind of, tiresome. Some of you are docents when the curator reads, but it's actually a way that I'm able to keep the words that I put on paper and translate, how I want to say something. So if this is boring, I apologize in advance, but here are the words from kind of the introduction. So the mural quote is actually from, and this is where we got the title. It's how hard to realize that every camp of men or beasts has this glorious starry firmament for a roof. In such places, standing alone on the mountaintop, it is easy to realize that whatever special nests we make, leaves or moss like the marmots or birds, or tents and piled stone, we all dwell in a house of one room, the world with a firmament for its roof, and we are sailing the celestial spaces without leaving any track. So this was written in 1936. So I just want to say that Elizabeth's masterful paintings really originate from her intimate observation and profound reverence for the natural environment. She camps in the wilderness under the vast dome of stars while listening to the many sounds that punctuate the silence. It connects Bradford to the world that is not mediated by technology. Kayaking through rivers and waterways provide a unique vantage point to study riverbanks and the lush vegetation beyond, seeing the chaotic complexity of growth and decay. The quiet passage on water enables Bradford to glimpse birds, insects, reptiles, and small mammals, the inhabitants of this landscape, beyond our urban enclaves of concrete and manicured lawns. She sees the abundant growth of trees and vegetation. The decades Bradford has devoted to observing, sketching, chronicling, and photographing these environments have filled her repository of visual references, which she uses to create compositions that magnify her discoveries. There is deep interdependence in the natural world. There are countless symbiotic relationships as death begets life and life succumbs to death. This interconnectedness is the same notion that John Muir professed in the introductory quote, that we reside in a house of one room. Because of Muir's profound knowledge of interdependence, he advocated for environmental consciousness and the establishment of the national parks that could be accessible to all. An enthusiast of Henry David Thoreau's writings, Muir had respect for the transcendental and spiritual qualities of nature. He believed that national parks offered spiritual nourishment, places for rest, inspiration, and prayer. He believed in the uncanny feelings of awe that can be evoked when the viewer is under the expansive dome of the nighttime sky. Conversely, our contemporary image bank celebrates the perspective of Earth viewed from space, a small, even fragile, blue and white sphere. Both felt perspectives, immense smallness and largeness, are important spatial considerations situating humankind in the order of things. As a very small child, Bradford has a vivid memory of a fence being constructed to surround her backyard, ostensibly for her safety. Instead of security, the gridded fence stirred feelings of confinement and limitation as her small fingers gripped the wires and she looked at the world beyond. As she grew, she was schooled in the cultural norms of the time, piano lessons, needlework, white gloves at outings, yet there were makers in her life that also cultivated her creative spirit. Her grandfather's carpentry shop with curls of wood shavings, the guidebook to embroidery stitches given by her grandmother, provided a key for thread compositions of Bradford's own design. The cultivated bounty of the vegetable garden and the flower beds at her grandparents' farm also added to her visual references and grounded her sense of place. As an adult, Bradford, like the British modernist author Virginia Woolf, was able to establish a room of her own, as she converted an outbuilding on the farm to her studio. Equally important is the mental and spiritual space Bradford claims when hiking and kayaking, sometimes for weeks at a time. She is free from the confines of daily life and free to enter her own sanctuary, to be, to think, and to create. So we know that Elizabeth has kind of spotty internet connection at her farm in outside of Davidson, but she has provided a quote for me to share with you all about one of the paintings that she wants to talk about. So she has chosen Rain on Lake Lila. And this is what she had to say about this particular painting, which I think is absolutely stunning. I chose to talk about the painting that I have kept close at hand since I painted it. Until the exhibition opens, it will hang in my bedroom where I study it daily. Rain on Lake Lila came out of the experience of sitting for several days and watching the sky and the wildlife and the water during a canoe trip in the Adirondacks. It was as if I painted it after a stint in a monastery. I think it is imbued with that contemplative energy. Ellipses are always challenging for me to paint. I usually have to paint and repaint and adjust them many times to get them right. And this painting had dozens of ellipses. They're intersecting forms, areas of scrambled abstraction, and I love the way the strict geometry meets and mingles with the wild abstractions over and over. We are, in the painting, looking at patterns on the surface of the lake. The use of reflective pigment serves to keep us on the surface. If we try to penetrate the picture plane, we are stopped by that shining reflective surface. The dark values in the painting are the opposite. They are infinitely deep, so that we are shuttled back and forth as viewers between the surface depth and geometry and randomness. This painting is very interesting in dim light, as I discovered by having it in my bedroom. I am reminded of Chris O'Feely's exhibition at the New Museum, I think, in 2010, when he exhibited brooding and reflective paintings in a darkened room. So I will go on now and talk about two paintings that I've selected from our preview show. And this one is Wisteria Vines. And it actually was the premier painting in the exhibition for the Boiling Rock Art and History Museum and was the cover of the catalog. Really stunning painting. But what I'm really drawn to is the complex and chaotic lines within this painting reveal the intense growth of wisteria vines. These vines can be cultivated on a trellis or wild and chaotic like they are presented here. I also see the vines functioning as a type of barrier. Whether this boundary is comforting or confining is a matter of perspective. If one takes time to look, there's much to complicate in the flowing variety of intersecting lines. I'm reminded of Van Gogh's box of threads that he used to work out color compositions, or conversely, looking into a board of embroidery floss and finding it in a tangle that requires work to put it straight. The bold diagonal line created by the tree's trunk anchors the composition and creates both contrast and even a dividing fissure. The blue sky and the tender green of new leaves is beyond and not easily accessible. Yet even within this confined space, there are beautiful and fragrant blossoms. Spring's intense latent energy is captured. And then the next painting, created about 5 years later, is October Mountain Island Lake. And by contrast, October Mountain Island Lake is clear and refined like a stained glass window. The colors are vibrant and the vines are tamed and rendered in a soothing blue. Bradford captures the changing energy of the seasons. Spring is intense and humid and tangled. Autumn is settled, crisp, and radiant. True colors of leaves are revealed. The atmosphere is less humid and the space is unconfined, open, and inviting. This image was inspired by a kayak trip Bradford took on the nearby Mountain Island Lake. The vantage point is from the water, looking up through the dappled light, filtering through the leaves. Rather than focusing on lines for the composition, Bradford uses many dots of color to render the light feeling of this sanctuary in nature. Those are my two commentaries, and I know that we'll hear from Bob and Ann as well.
Oh, this one has been my favorite piece since I started going through all the images. It's not one that's in the virtual exhibition that the teaser virtual exhibition that we put up online, but this one spoke to me right off the bat. I kept going through it, kept coming back to it. And I think I don't know if everybody's seen the online exhibitions, but I have the opportunity to really get in deep to all of her work, any of the work that I'm putting up, because I'm forced to really zoom in on certain parts of it. And when I did that with this piece, it's almost like several different paintings within one painting. The way that she framed the work, or the complex lines, in the background with those two bone trees really draws me in. I spend a lot of time in nature, not nearly as much time as Elizabeth and Carla, probably as much as I'd like to, but there's always something about that white that you don't often find in nature. And it jumps out at you and it draws you in. And that's exactly what this painting did for me. The way that it's framed in, that negative space to the right that really kind of cuts off that painting at the bottom. I feel like the top 2/3 of that painting, and I hate to use the term chaos, but a controlled chaos. And then if you block that off and just look at the bottom, it's this beautiful, calm abstraction that she uses in the reflection of the water. And it blows me away over and over again every time I look at it. Is this Anne?
This is you, Bob.
Oh, I'm happy to talk about it. And this is, again, it's that controlled, beautiful chaos, the way she uses her lines on top of that beautiful background. I've been to this place. I know I've spent time in this place. And this also for me, I don't know, and Carla would know best. I don't know if anybody's ever referred to Elizabeth as a landscape painter, but I don't see that in her work. I see more of her being a painter of nature, a painter of her experience, a painter of a lot of the things that most of us might not ever see. A lot of people might not ever come across this experience without having lived a similar lifestyle or had similar hobbies. And a lot of her work does that for me. And it's just, it's so moving. Everything's so moving in such different ways.
Bob, can you talk a little bit about the online exhibition and how you put the virtual exhibition together and what that experience was like?
Oh, from the get-go, it's been a wonderful learning experience. It hasn't been a learning curve. It's been a learning experience. I've never done anything like this before. As far as the Bradford exhibition goes, Carla and Elizabeth grouped everything so nicely for me. As you know, some of the pieces obviously went together, so I was able to group them together. Some of the pieces that they chose were obviously speaking to each other. So it's really a fun experience doing those shows. I had to learn it every step of the way. All the pieces are scaled to the correct size that they would be in that gallery. They all have, hopefully, Elizabeth, I kind of went back and looked through several of her other exhibitions. It seemed to me like she used the same frame for most of her work. So, you know, we're building the frames. For some of the other virtual exhibitions, I'm having to build out the mats that they're on. And it's a little bit of a process. It's great. I love that we were able to use it in this situation as a teaser. I think we're going to be able to continue to do that. And Carla and Elizabeth allowed us to start that. And I think it works. I hope everybody's going and looking at that and getting ready for the full show that we'll bring soon.
And what I'll do, so if you haven't accessed the virtual exhibition, you can go to our website and click on exhibitions, and it's the first exhibition listed there. But I will also send everyone the link after our call today so that you can take some time to look through the virtual exhibition.
Bob, if I may ask you just to share, before we leave, all of your work with the virtual exhibitions.
Oh, absolutely.
During this time, that time and space and even knowing what day it is has become an increasing challenge, at least I can say for myself.
Sure.
Could you share something about the team that you've been working with putting together all of our virtual exhibitions? and what that's been like for you.
Sure, absolutely. It's a company in Nan. I think Nan's somewhere in this chat room. Nan turned me on to this company called Exhibit with 2 B's, and they're out of New Zealand. And I've kind of looked into the program a little bit, and seemed like something that would really work for us for this time. And we there's Nan. Billy Gray introduced us to him. And it's a lot of, if you've gone to any of the exhibitions, what I'm trying to do is represent what we're showing as best I can without people being able to visit the galleries. I'm trying to do the mats the exact same color the mats would be, the frames the exact same color the frames would be, and trying to keep things as accurate as I possibly can through these virtual exhibitions. And I think a lot of this, I think we're helping this company in New Zealand a lot, because we're getting so deep into the program that we're having to ask them, how is it possible to do this? Can we do this? And they're continuing to work on advice from us and other people around the world. We're adding audio, thanks to Grant, who's adding audio and adding links, thanks to Adam and Grant, to Belden videos. And I think we've already done a lot more than other organizations have done with this specific program. And it's been fun. Hey, Ann, there you are. And we're having to cheat a little bit, if we can use that. We're having to find ways around the program to, better serve our community. And, Elizabeth Bradford's exhibition, Carla, you might remember this, was done in 2 different galleries. We had it in a smaller one where, Elizabeth's work really needs space. What the perfect word for this exhibition. And it didn't work at first. So we had to figure out a lot of little loopholes to get everything up like we want. And it's great. We're getting there, if we're not there already.
With all of that, the myriad details and challenges, folks, imagine that during this time, and working with that are on a 16-hour different time frame from you.
Yeah.
That's just a little tiny glimpse into our Bob's world.
My early morning exhibition design has helped out a little bit with that. So, but yeah, sometimes you write someone and it's in the middle of the night and you need an answer. It's hard to wait.
Bob has long been our resident vampire. He gets a good bit of his work done between 2:30 and 6 a.m.
Yeah, about that. That's then I get to chase a 3-year-old around.
Before we move on to contemplation of this last work and open things to questions,
Sure.
While we're on this track with the anatomy of an exhibition, we've learned a little bit about the anatomy of a virtual exhibition. We find folks very interested and oftentimes surprised about the time it takes to put an exhibition together. Teams work on this for years, and the way they come about is very much due to you. And so if I may take a moment to turn our focus back to you who have gathered with us. Dear members, you are our Zoom. You make us Zoom. You are our Varoom. We couldn't, you've heard me say it so often, the museum would not exist without you. And this period of time, it is never more far from hyperbole to remind all of us that we are here because of you. And Elizabeth's exhibition, the anatomy of Elizabeth's exhibition, and Carla coming into our life, and Elizabeth and her extraordinary paintings, is very much due to a collaboration with Jay Everett, who is located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he works deeply with a philanthropic wing of the Wells Fargo Foundation. Their mission is very focused on the life, the cultural life of our region, and support of artists. And so the alignment with our mission being that as well, the coming together, the partnership with CAM and Wells Fargo has been so rich. And so Wells Fargo is very much a reason why we are spending these precious minutes together today. So I did want to thank Jay and the extraordinary support. You know, their expectations were an actual exhibition, and they've been completely supportive, flexible, and downright enthusiastic about Bob's idea to, at least in this interim, turn a portion of the exhibition into a virtual experience. So thank you all for experimenting with this experience with us. So your feedback and your presence today is critically important to our work now and in the future. If I may speak personally, I love this painting. It's called Duckweed as Constellation, I believe.
Right.
And bringing in the amazing poetic remarks by Carla and poetic references early on by Elizabeth. So let's quieten our hearts, because that's really what Elizabeth does. And it's what she holds us to do, is to quieten our hearts, be observant, take that beat. And we're learning this in this period of quarantine, aren't we? To stop and really look and take in a moment. So, what's in front of us? And bringing into the point Bob's lovely references about how compositionally Elizabeth frames her compositions. Okay, I don't know what I'm looking at. And I'm absolutely enchanted by that disorientation she has given me. Am I looking down into a glassy surface of the water, clearly reflecting a cloudy sky? Am I in a forest, curiously looking up into the sky? There are elements of water. She also works with spider webs, which give her a matrix that anchors her looking into a more vast vista. I don't see a spider web here, but I see a very centering mandala matrix that looks like water reflections that's anchoring my soul to encourage me to be expansive and take a chance into this place I have no idea where I'm going. Furthermore, the tree, is it a reflection? Is it a real tree? The way she has parenthetically, that's a really bold form, is it not? That's the strongest point of contrast, the tree and the ground that it's in. That's really gutsy, you all. Knowing Elizabeth and how deeply she mixes her colors, she's not using black straight out of the tube, but it's really a saturation on a value scale as deep as black. But that parenthetical curvature of the tree, it embraces me. So it's further giving me a safe place to really leap into the unknown. Furthermore, artists are problem solvers. Artists, like structural engineers, like quilters, like bread bakers, like gardeners, like any of us. With our projects, we have a set objective, and we have a variety of elements that we're using to problem solve. So think about Elizabeth's very choice of the scale of this canvas. We are looking at a two-dimensional surface. We are looking at an acrylic painting on canvas. Flat, y'all, flat. And acrylic, she's so masterful with acrylic. Acrylic is even more difficult to elicit experiences of light from. And recall Carla's points about that beautiful painting that she chose, which really was stained glass-like. So for this vignette, if you and I had chosen this same vignette, would you have chosen such an attenuated scale? Oftentimes, Bob is finding many of her paintings, she follows a 4-foot by 5-foot format. So think about the joy that we'll have regathering together with the actual exhibition. And so that 4 by 5 format hanging on the wall, it's more our human scale, is it not? So it really will be more experientially active with our very bodies. We're looking at something inches high now, but I still think the way she stretched herself just with the decision of the size of this canvas, and this breaks free from her usual go-to of a 4 by 5 foot ratio. She has attenuated it more. I think that's a very curious form to have chosen to give us such a deep and, for my soul, limitless, bountifully enriching experience. Every time I look at this work, I see something new, and look at all of the radiuses of structure, the radial forms of the tree at the bottom edge. Look how that takes us into a sphere. Now I'm more aware of that sphere off to the right of the composition. But I keep coming back to that lovely mandala that regrounds me just below center, and then I leap into that limitless blue opening in the cloud forms. I had a teacher in grad school, Paul Hartley. God, Paul's not with us anymore, but he would always tell us to be ever mindful of the distracting thing. Always have the distracting thing on the edge of the canvas to uncenter us, to distract us. So a great fun game is to try to edit something in the canvas. So even that top right quadrant that has the yellow leafy forms in it, just try to take that yellowness out of the corner and look how the composition falls apart. If she hadn't given us those little scintillating patterns of yellow throughout, it would still be geometrically. Carla talked about the geometry. Elizabeth talked about the geometry. We would still have such a richness with the matrix of lines and network, but those little touches of the yellow light. Whew. So she layers and layers these different experiences. She loves patterning, but she knows when to step back. She knows when the painting's done. She knows when to put it away. Heather, shall we sit? We love to hear from you.
Yes, we would love some questions. If you have questions, so you can ask a question in the chat box and I'll read it. You can ask a question for Carla, Bob, or Anne specifically, or you can ask a question and all of them can answer it for you. So if you have any questions, we'd love to hear them. Carla, I had a question about Elizabeth's process. If you could talk a little bit about her process. Does she paint in the field? Does she sketch? Can you tell us a little bit about her process?
Right. So the question about her process, very rarely does she paint directly in nature. She sometimes does sketches, or will take some photographs or make notations, but really the compositions are based on inspiration from nature and her recollections of the colors and the patterning, but really they are drawn from her imagination. So it's not a direct application of exactly what she's seen in nature. So I think that's also what's, as Bob pointed out, she's not necessarily a landscape artist, she's a nature painter, but she's also very much a contemporary artist that's building these realities for us to experience.
And Carla, she seems very much a writer and a reader as well. Does she write about her work while she's creating it?
So she has a blog, and she's been, I don't know if she's so active on it right now, but she would post things about new paintings or just things that were happening in her life, or just experiences that she's had. Sometimes after coming back from a camping or kayaking trip, she'll post a blog posting about that trip with images. But yes, she's very much a person that enjoys the written word, is very particular about words and descriptions, and loves language. So there is a correlation between language and her artwork and the form. And I would say that all of these paintings are very structured. And some people, some scientists that she corresponds with even, talk a little bit about chaos theory, that, from their perspective, they can see some of the chaos theory models within this work. There's also pattern, idea of fluid dynamics. If you're interested in hydraulics, some people can see that. So there's a literary and also a scientific perspective to what she's doing that I find really fascinating. And then I guess what I'm drawn to is really similar to what I've heard Anne talk about, is kind of the more spiritual dynamics and the more centering things, like the idea of the mandala, and even like some of the first forms that we're drawn to as a child. I think about the target symbol. That is the most recognizable form that almost every child recognizes, because it's like the mother's breast with the nipple. So like literally these central circular patterns are just so grounded into our wiring as humans and as mammals. But I think just her use of circular and spirals, it also is something that resonates with us. And then the idea of the mandala, which is also a circular pattern that radiates out. Like a lot of psychotherapists, especially like Jungian psychotherapists, believe that rendering a mandala every morning will tell you a lot if you do that as a practice over 30 days. Just looking at what patterns you're putting down in those circular mandala forms will provide insight into your inner psyche and what's happening in the forms you might recognize like a month later that you're not even conscious of at that time. And then spider webs, wow, the mythological components of that, all the way back to Arachne, the mortal challenging the god with her weaving skills and actually being able to conquer the god, and evoking rage so that she was turned into a spider. But then, there's that continual weaving and this beautiful web making that we see in nature. It's often invisible, but only illuminated when we see it in the morning dew, that with all these beautiful droplets in nature. So it also is kind of a nod to women's work that many contemporary artists are exploring. Specifically, I think a lot of the sculptor Louise Bourgeois, who grew up in a textile family in France, in a very dysfunctional family, but yet she uses the symbol of the spider as a symbol of her mother, Maman, that held the family together. And their whole family was employed in repairing ancient, or not ancient, but antique tapestries, for very wealthy clients in France. So I see that, this connection to the spider and to women's work and pattern making, all of these things also really inform Elizabeth's work. It's very deep. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can take away from it. And then I really appreciate Anne's comments as a painter, just looking at compositionally about what will happen, if certain things are taken away, like if the yellow is taken away. And then my mind went to like the really goofy film, LA Story, with Steve Martin, and the person that he was dating that ultimately wasn't, the woman that he was meant to be with, but she was a buyer for LA Guy. He was doing 20-minute lips in LA before they went out to a party. And then she said, what you have to do before you leave the door is like look in the mirror and then look back, and whatever you immediately see, that's the extraneous element, and take it away. So it's kind of a funny quote, but I think the idea of composing a painting and composing that is also looking at the extraneous detail, so there isn't anything that isn't supposed to be within the composition. So I've been watching Elizabeth evolve as an artist, for about 15 years, and she's just becoming more and more masterful. There isn't a lot of extraneous detail. They're beautifully rendered. There are just so many beautiful geometric patterns, and her sophisticated use of color and complex lines, and not being afraid to go for that chaos, and a lot of different patterns all within one composition. I think she's also very courageous, which is sometimes hard to be. If you're an artist and have found a particular genre that works for you, it's really easy to stick within that same form and same habit. That she really expands her boundary and it expands her.
So we have one question from Jeanette. She says, does her creative or scientific brain create the final results?
So I would absolutely say that it is her creative brain. Whatever the scientific thing, that kind of comes afterwards. So she is a mother of 3 sons, and she believes in the connection of music and mathematics. So she would always play classical music for her sons when they were doing their math homework. I think she always plays music in the studio, and she's always, sometimes it's classical music, sometimes it's other things. So I think that music actually does something about wiring those more scientific things within our brain. It's based on patterns, it's based on numbers. So I don't know if there's ever been an exploration about music and art and about how those things connect, but I think that in a way the music is also activating the scientific pattern making part of her brain as she's composing and as she's painting.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Carla. Any more questions? Oh, I want to echo what Anne said. We are so grateful to all of you, our members. You are the lifeblood of our institution, especially during this time when we can't see you. And that so many of you have chosen to be on the Zoom call with us is just so uplifting and so heartening for us at the museum. We'd love to answer any more questions if you have questions. Luke's asked a great question. Will the Bradford exhibition be up as soon as the museum opens? Bob, do you want to talk about that?
We don't have a definite date set yet for the opening, as far as, I know. We are gonna, after Noguchi, we're gonna work on that, getting that space figured out. We are going to open up with a version of She Persisted in the other parts of the wing, where Freelon is Studio One, but we're still working on figuring out where we are in the world at the time we get back to being open, and then hopefully setting some dates in stone.
Bob, can you tell everyone about She Persists? I don't know if they're familiar with, or Anne?
I was just going to jump in. I'm so glad you asked Bob to say more about She Persists, but on Luke's great question about Bradford, and again, the anatomy of an exhibition and the kind of the behind the scenes thing. In nearly 60 years of being an art museum, you continue to encounter new challenges. And Elizabeth's actual exhibition would be on view in our largest contemporary space next month, ordinarily. But of course, things are different now. And currently, we have the beautiful exhibition of work by Osamu Noguchi in the Hughes Wing. It would have closed May the 26th, but it's not. And it has to do with the Noguchi Foundation. New York is still under a ban with non-essential travel. Regionally, New York is just reopening bit by bit. The Noguchi Foundation is in Queens. It's still not reopened. And so we will continue to exhibit the Noguchi exhibition because we are not allowed to deinstall it. because their team can't come from New York to deinstall it. So this is quite an unusual situation. It's a beautiful show, but I just wrote to them a few minutes before joining you all to encourage them they're speculating that they'll come and help Bob and me deinstall the show early September. So Elizabeth's show, and of course Jay Everett with Wells Fargo, and Carla and Elizabeth and other folks are involved in this decision, but Elizabeth's show may follow Noguchi, or it may be in early 2021. So that's the intel on that. It's not for publication, but we love sharing that with you. And now back to your great question, Heather, for Bob.
Oh, and then we have one more question from Jay. Jay wants to know how many pieces will be in the Bradford exhibition. I guess Bob.
Well, I think last we were, Carla, and tell me if I'm wrong, we were upper 30s. I don't know if we've added since then. I know Elizabeth doesn't stop working.
Yeah. I think it's 38.
Is that right? Okay.
I keep following her on Instagram, and there's new paintings.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, Elizabeth just posted a new painting, yesterday on Instagram that she's been working on. So if you are on Instagram, I recommend that you follow Elizabeth. Her paintings are extraordinary.
But I don't want to give, Bob and Ann heart attacks that we're going to keep adding to the list, because I think what we have now is a really beautiful show. And I think it definitely shows a variety of her work and over a period of time. So I'm really happy with how it's come together. And I think I can hardly wait to see it within the beautiful big contemporary galleries at PAM. They're just wonderful. And we're talking about potentially even opening up the skylight, allowing some natural light within the galleries. And it's going to be a stunning exhibition. I can hardly wait to see it come to reality, and appreciate all the efforts with CAM by, rolling it out kind of gradually with the virtual exhibition and allowing this forum for people to see, kind of the appetizer of what the show's, the content of the show. And we're talking behind the scenes about maybe doing some other things, maybe even a video, an interview with Elizabeth and myself that can be posted on the website. So there are other things that we're strategizing, to keep building interest in the exhibition and to allow, the guests, supporters of CAM to see it even before or see aspects of it before it comes into the galleries, and to learn more about Elizabeth and her practice, and her mindset. And I wish her beautiful Southern voice was in this discussion.
We definitely have some
voice that I miss having here. But
definitely have some fans of Elizabeth in our chat box. Jay wants to know, will we acquire any of her work?
Yes, Jay, great question.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that is a part of our partnership, this generous partnership and shared mission with Wells Fargo Foundation. If and acquisitions are, it's a complex decision for any institution to steward a work of art in perpetuity. But if our acquisitions committee and our staff choose a work that we feel broadens our acquisitions focus, Wells Fargo will help us considerably with the purchase of that work. So again, it's supporting a living, working North Carolina artist. It's helping tremendously the ongoing work of our institution. What a great question. Thank you. So if once we open the show, if you have any favorites that you want to share, can we acquire this one? Can we acquire this one? Bob will love to field those comments.
I would love it.
So Bob, back to She Persists. Would you like to tell everyone a little bit about the scope of that exhibition that will be up when sooner than later?
Sooner than later. That's an exhibition we've been working on for a while keeps, because of our current situation, again, keeps changing in size.
Mm-hmm.
So we've just recently put the show together that may still get edited one way or the other, but it's going to be female artists from our collection. So the Minnie Evans, the Mary Cassatt's, hopefully the Viola Fry, we can get her up. Beverly Buchanan's, Beverly McIver. We're going to do a focus on female artists specifically in our collection, and that will be the next thing that we tackle as soon as we get back in here. It's going to be great.
Any more questions? Thank you all for being here today. We are so grateful. I can't believe we have 40 people for our first member Zoom. That's amazing. We'll be doing more of these so that we can stay in touch even when we can't see each other in person.
And Carla, we know you reworked your very busy schedule to be with us this morning. We are so grateful for all of your work and joining us. You make the exhibition live in such deeply abiding ways. Having worked with and known Elizabeth for 15 years, that's background we would never ever have. And your insights and understanding of the background, from an art historical standpoint, you bring so much to the life of this exhibition. So we look forward to working with you in these next months in an even deeper capacity. You've been so generous and helpful. Thank you.
And
thank you, Carla.
one last thing, Sabrina graciously posted the link to the virtual exhibition in the chat box, so you don't even have to wait for an email from me. Copy that link, plug it into your computer, into your browser right after we get off the call, and you can enjoy more of Elizabeth's work. So thank you all for being here. We're so grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has really been a great Zoom call and participation. I love how you've managed it with engaging people with questions, asking about their favorite work at CAM, and just allowing us to get together. Of course, we all miss the physical contact, but we don't have to be socially distanced. We just have to be physically distant. So thank you.
You were so
great to get carefully together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. We'll do it again.
Thank you, Heather, for making
Bye.
this happen.